All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this month's webinar on Innovation for Good, where we'll be focusing on identifying and leveraging partnerships through backbone organizations. And for those of you who are new to BALLE, we are the fastest growing business alliance of values-aligned entrepreneurs, business networks, and local economy funders in North America. And at BALLE, we are working to create real prosperity by connecting leaders, spreading solutions that work, and driving investment towards local economies. I am Leslie Lindo, the Director of Community Engagement for BALLE, and today I'm pleased to be joined by D'Artagnan Scorza, who will be moderating this session. We also have Kelly Ramirez joining us as one of the speakers, and Donovan Woollard, and they will be sharing their stories about the work they are doing around social entrepreneurship and ecosystem building. We will have 45 minutes of a moderated session and then open it up to questions from the audience. To ask a question, please click the chat icon at the bottom right corner of your screen and type your questions into the chat box at any time during the discussion. In the last 10 minutes, D'Artagnan will select questions from the chat box to be posed to our speakers. If you're unable to see the video of the speakers, please click the icon that represents the heads of people. The public webinar will close at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and BALLE champion members are invited to remain in the room for a 30-minute private Q&A with the speakers. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, D'Artagnan Scorza. D'Artagnan is the founder and executive director of Social Justice Learning Institute in Inglewood, California. He is a 2010 Education Pioneers Fellow and a 2013 BALLE Fellow. At SJLI, he leads a team that works to close disparities in education, expand business opportunities, improve health in the built environment, and help the youth of age go to college. D'Artagnan is a community organizer with extensive program development and policy experience, and he's helped pass green school policies and statewide policies democratizing food access. He currently serves on the Los Angeles and California Food Policy Councils and was elected to the Inglewood School Board in April. He is currently engaged in grassroots policy efforts affecting boys and men of color, health equity, and local economic development. Welcome, D'Artagnan. Thank you for being with us today.
Fine afternoon. I want to start by saying that social enterprises are an important driver for inclusive growth and play a key role in tackling both the current economic and environmental challenges that we face. And so today's webinar is going to center on how we build out the social social enterprise ecosystem by first exploring some of the work of the individuals who are engaged in these networks and in these building efforts, from the pre-entrepreneur to the impact investor, and then by having a discussion that allows us to understand the way in which we can participate in that ecosystem. At the Social Justice Learning Institute, we work with what's called the pre-entrepreneur. Pre-entrepreneurs are individuals that have expressed an interest in either economic development or developing their own businesses, but yet lack the skills and or support needed to transition into business ownership. So for example, we have young men that we work with, African-American males predominantly, who have been recently concerned about the increased ways in which they've experienced, or our communities experience, police brutality or violence. One of the things that they decided to do, in addition to speaking about these issues publicly, was to develop an app that would allow folks to report these incidences as well as capture videos of their experiences. And as such, are now working and seeking investment for that app. And so this is one of the ways in which social enterprise can help address some of the challenges we face. Today, you're going to be speaking to two leaders in this environment, both Kelly Ramirez, who is the CEO of Social Enterprise Greenhouse and the founder of Seed Summit, as well as Donovan Woollard, who is the director of Radius Ventures. Kelly previously directed the Social Enterprise Initiative at William Davidson Institute and was an adjunct lecturer in social entrepreneurship at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. Kelly received MA degrees in public policy and urban planning and a BA in political science from the University of Michigan. She completed a leadership certificate program at Ross School of Business and received a scholarship to attend Harvard Business School Strategic Perspectives in Nonprofit Management. She was named a Woman to Watch by the Providence Business News and is a 2014 BALLE Fellow. And she was recently appointed to Rhode Island Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. Donovan's work focuses on translating great sustainable business ideas into great sustainable businesses. He is an environmental entrepreneur and a proven business advisor. In 2013, Donovan became the Director of Radius Ventures, an impact business incubator at SFU's Beatty School of Business, and through Radius's 6-month slingshot and 7-week trampoline programs, helps impact businesses to become market and investor ready. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Kelly, who's going to talk a bit about the social entrepreneurship ecosystem, as well as prepare us for a great dialogue. Kelly?
Rhode Island. We are a network, we're a nonprofit, we're a network of business and community leaders who are working together to build the social enterprise ecosystem and drive economic development, job growth, community development through the creation and growth of social enterprises. There's a lot of conversation in this new field about what is a social enterprise, and we have a pretty open mind about what we consider a social enterprise. So it's any business that we believe is doing well and doing good, creating jobs, making our communities better and stronger. So we really are legal structure agnostic. We're working with both nonprofit and for-profit social enterprises. We can go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, perfect. So we call ourselves the social enterprise ecosystem builder. So we really are working to support the social entrepreneur and social venture all the way from ideation to funding. And our theory of action is that we believe if we can build a strong pipeline of impact entrepreneurs, provide them with the business acumen that they need, as well as access to capital, help create an enabling policy environment, and ensure that they have the networks that they need, we'll end up with more, stronger, successful social enterprises, which will ultimately result in more jobs and better jobs and lives improved. And we do this through, we have a menu of about, I guess, 10 now key programs and services. Really at the center of our work is this concept of business development services. So we've really found that the social entrepreneur is incredibly knowledgeable and passionate about the social challenge that they're trying to address, and, you know, are sort of on a spectrum of how much business acumen that they have. So we really believe that that is like the core of what we can do for these entrepreneurs. And I should say kind of our secret sauce is we have this network of now 160 business and community leaders who volunteer with us, and they're incredibly engaged. And you know, you make these matches between these business leaders who want to give back in a very strategic way and our entrepreneurs, and it can really be magical. So on the business development side, we have a 4-pronged approach. We offer one-on-one workshops for very early stage ventures. We have a very robust accelerator for sort of mid-mezzanine stage ventures. We offer that in collaboration with Brown University. It's a blended learning model, so much of the content's delivered online. It's complemented with face-to-face workshops and coaching and advising. And then we offer a post-accelerator strategy, sort of brainstorm plus pro bono consulting. And we offer that service in collaboration with the Harvard and Wharton Business Alumni Associations here regionally. So you can see, you can already see, like, we're all about partnerships because we're still pretty small. Then on the capital and sort of financial services side, we offer fiscal sponsorship for some of our startups that are choosing a nonprofit legal structure. We offer for-fee bookkeeping, and then we have a loan fund. Very low interest rate, very hands-on, lots of technical assistance. And sort of peripherally, we're working to create an impact fund, Rhode Island Impact Capital, which would make equity investments in later stage social ventures. And then, of course, what our ventures need are customers. So we've been dabbling with the best way to do that. We had an online marketplace called Buy with Heart that was, we just didn't really get the traction. Now we're in the very early stages of thinking about launching an anchor activation project where we'll work with our universities and hospitals and try to help them buy more locally and more socially. And I guess most recently, I'm on this call from our new co-working space. It's only a couple months old, great traction. This is another collaboration with Brown University. They own the building. And it's really a game changer for us to be able to have, many of our entrepreneurs in the same space together, collaborating, colliding, and it's just pretty magical. We can move to the next slide. So we've been doing this work for a little over 5 years, starting to see some really strong impact. But again, I keep going back to jobs created because in Rhode Island, our unemployment is so high. So we have in our portfolio now about 160 impact ventures. And those ventures in aggregate have created 750 plus jobs and improved the lives of 250,000 people. So that's really what we set out to do and what we really track. Of course, we track our metrics on all of our programs, but ultimately it comes down to jobs and lives improved. We can go to the next slide. So it's working. We've seen growth. Our budget now is about $700,000. 25% of that comes from contributions from our volunteers. So, it's pretty magical that many of our most engaged volunteers are also some of our most committed funders, I would say. 50% comes from grants and sponsorships, and 25% is earned revenue. My goal is to make that turn that 25% into 50% by 2020. So we're really thinking about, what else can we do to really practice what we preach about, earning more revenue. And maybe just the final slide we can move to. Most of what we do, we are doing a major deep dive here in Rhode Island. But we believe that, what we're doing here is really working. And we also see a need in some of our neighboring states. So we're, with some of our programs, trying to reach more regionally. With our Accelerator, we're recruiting into Massachusetts and Connecticut now. And then on a national level, we really, not to say it all, we are so far from perfecting this model, but we've learned a lot. We're definitely a learning organization, and one of our goals is to really share what we learned. So we have templates like how to start a loan fund for social enterprises, and we're really committed to sharing what we've learned. And that's really, one of our interests in the ecosystem is we just think it would be awesome if ultimately there was a whole network of social enterprise ecosystem builders across North America, and we could all be kind of working together and sharing best practice. So that was probably more than 3 minutes, sorry.
No worries, and thank you so much, Kelly. I think what we know is that social enterprises, by definition, work to create positive societal impact and work simultaneously to generate profits. And so I think what we can glean from what you are sharing with us in terms of your theory of action is that in order for that to happen, there has to be a pipeline of talented social entrepreneurs, as well as folk who can help build business acumen along the way, right? And I think what you're suggesting is sort of a reflection of what needs to happen if we're going to strengthen social enterprise along the way. So thank you very much.
No, exactly. And just, I was so excited to hear you talk about the work that you do with the pre-entrepreneur work. I wish we had that here, to be honest. So I want to talk to you offline about that because that's such an important part of building the pipeline.
Yeah, I think there are a number of examples around the country. For example, in Asheville, there's Green, there's Go, there's a Green Jobs Network. There are a number of organizations around the country that are heavily invested in building pre-entrepreneurs, which is one of the reasons why we have Donovan on the phone because, I'm sorry, on the line, because Donovan is going to share with us a case study about the work that he's doing and in many ways ground us in strategies that can be utilized to help incubate social enterprises. So Donovan, please take it away.
Thanks, D'Artagnan, and thanks also to BALLE for the opportunity to share a little bit of our story of what we're doing here in Vancouver. So Radius is an initiative of the BD School of Business at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver, Canada. And essentially for some reason we call ourselves a social innovation lab and venture incubator, which is a very, very jargon-heavy way of saying that we work with individuals and small companies that we call radical doers. And these are people that are applying their work and their efforts to try to transform the economies around themselves and to really shape the communities in a direction which is much more socially and environmentally beneficial. And so, I mean, essentially, what we do is we help people to, starting from that pre-entrepreneur stage, to design and then move into develop and ultimately to deploy and grow their ideas. For the most cases, it's ventures, but it's not exclusively. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so really we try to, our aim is to work with radical doers from the time that they're a switched on undergrad that have just been exposed to new and important concepts, and they're still grappling with how exactly they're going to positively impact what they want to achieve, straight through to full ecosystem participants. In many cases, these are venture capital ready entrepreneurs that are ready to take the world by storm. And similar to the theme of the session today and some of the things that Kelly was touching on, we also agree that entrepreneurship is not a solo sport, and we really focus our efforts on building communities of practice. And we do that through cohorts, cohort-based learning of like-minded doers from our fellows program at the early stage, at the exploration stage. These are folks that are still in that, that stage of am I an entrepreneur? Am I a policy analyst? Am I an activist? What is it exactly that makes me tick and will continue to make me tick as I grapple with these issues over the course of my professional life? Straight through to cohorts of entrepreneurs that are validating or growing their business. And that's what I'll talk about most, because that's the part of Radius that I run. Next slide, please. So Radius Ventures is our incubator and our accelerator, and we use it to support entrepreneurs that believe that, here's an interesting and really important problem that society faces, and I think I might have a solution to it. And if we think that you might be onto something, and we want to help you with the development and deployment of that, then a spot in our incubator or accelerator programs are open to you. So the first stage is our trampoline that D'Artagnan mentioned. It's an 8-session program focused on business model validation. And the key theme is that I and we believe that a successful venture marries 3 things. It has, it's solving a meaningful problem. It's got a core purpose. Secondly, that it is aligned with the passions and skill set of the entrepreneur, because they're going to be doing this for the next months, the next years, and if it's burning them out and they don't love it, then nobody else is going to love it either. And then thirdly, it has a viable business model. And if we can bring those 3 elements into alignment, then we might have something that has a fighting chance. Or if we can help people to pivot to a place where they can get those elements into alignment, then we might be off to the races. Or also we recognize that, some ideas just, this is the right time to grapple with it, whether or not they have a fighting chance. And so that's our trampoline program. Our Slingshot Accelerator is our 6-month program, which is focused on growth stage ventures. Again, these are all impact-focused ventures that have been generating some revenue, typically on the order of about $50,000 to $250,000 to date. And they're at a stage now where they're ready to move beyond bootstrapping and organic growth and receive external investments and pursue market entry on a deeper level. And then the final element that we're just getting ready to launch is a seed stage investment fund in partnership with our friends at the Mars Center for Impact Investing in Toronto, where we'll provide a small pool of funds to growth-ready early-stage companies, again in the impact space. And this is something that is sorely needed, and we're really thrilled to be a part of that. Next slide, please. So just a very quick shot of some of the ventures that participated in our previous Slingshot program. We have one group in the top left there that has a proprietary self-watering garden system. So if you're like me and you really like the idea of gardening, but you don't like the execution of it, and you're lazy and you forget things and your tomatoes die all the time, well, here's something that can actually store a reservoir of water and automatically whip that into healthy and sustainable plants. In the bottom left, we have Urban Stream, which is an on-site composting system for restaurants and multi-unit residential buildings. Again, it's designed to be completely user-friendly with the experience of a restaurateur. And instead of hauling away, heavy, wet, stinky masses of organic waste, they come in every couple of weeks and collect out, finished worm castings that are low weight and high value, and those can be reintroduced back into the nutrient cycle for urban farmers and other folks that are making better use of that than all the organisms that have just turned it into methane at a landfill. So next slide, please. So the broader impact that we aim to have is broad community events. And so again, using the ecosystem metaphor, believing that entrepreneurs thrive in a thriving ecosystem of doers and explorers, we have fairly regular events. One of our signature events coming up on June 3rd. If anybody is in Vancouver, I encourage you to come. And it's our Social Venture Failure Week. And recognizing that, if it was easy, it would have happened already. And entrepreneurship is always difficult. But when you're doing a venture that has multiple objectives, multiple bottom lines, we liken it to entrepreneurship backwards and in heels, if that Ginger Rogers example means anything to you. So it's an Irish-style wake where we're in a bar, we celebrate, we listen to stories of entrepreneurs that have given it a good shot, but ultimately their venture didn't make it for some reason or another. And we give them a toast and release that entrepreneurial energy back into the ecosystem and really try to destigmatize the risk. We all like the success of risk and are afraid of the fact that it doesn't always go that way. So that's our effort there. And then the Cascadia Social Innovation Tour is, we're always up for a good road trip. And we're really proud of what are happening here in Vancouver, but we also recognize that our sister cities in Portland and Seattle are up to a thing or two as well. So we're taking 60 people on a train down to those cities next month to build greater cross-fertilization and just really sort of develop this Cascadia region as a place of social innovation. Next slide. And here's a slide that I have in here for no reason other than that I like it. It was one of the presentation slides from one of our ventures at the conclusion of our cohort last time. And what this basically represents is the trajectory that he was on before Radius, where as he was getting closer and closer to break even, and on the blue line there, he was also recognizing that he was on a path towards insanity and burnout on the red line. And over the course of this presentation, which was a lot of fun, really told a story of getting himself and his business back on track. And it's really sort of that intersection of the personal and the professional that is at the heart of what we do at Radius. And so we were really excited to see that. And so I'll sign off there. Next slide. I think, oh yeah, sorry. And because we were asked for the stats and the facts as we see them, Radius, we're 2.5 years old. We were founded a couple of years ago. We have an annual budget of about $600,000 that is serviced by the university, by Van City Credit Union, which is a very progressive very large $20 billion in assets credit union here in Vancouver, the McConnell Family Foundation, as well as we take a performance fee from our ventures as they are successful and only if they are successful. And I'd be happy to talk about that model down the road. And we got a little team of 5 that's plugging away here, and it's a lot of fun.
Donovan, thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation, especially talking about the ways in which you work with social entrepreneurs to help take care of themselves as well. And I think often we forget about the role of the personal in this work and all the support that goes into building the individual.
Yeah, it's a huge part of what we do, and I think that the whole idea of the entrepreneur needs to be, really thought about in a much more mature, developed way. It's sort of this classic sense of that, it's a very popular term these days, and everybody feels that they want to be an entrepreneur. And I think part of that is driven by the sense that, you get together with a few friends, you have a whiteboard and pizza and beer session, you come up with a perfect idea, and then almost instantaneously, you're driving away in your Ferrari and, living a life of luxury. And I think people forget that in between those two stages, there's, a lot of just like slugging away in the dark and loneliness and questioning, is anybody actually going to love this? And so it's exhausting. And building a community of people around you as you're going through that journey and giving you better tools to deal with that journey and just let you know, like, hey, this journey's coming. This is I think, almost more than anything else, the best value that we offer.
Yeah, I'd love to sort of add to that. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Donovan, because we were sort of missing that piece up until, I would say, a year and a half ago, and didn't really think about how important sort of the self-care of the social entrepreneur is and how important peers are. And we, about a year ago, launched just a peer network. So we have a group of mid to later stage social entrepreneurs that are getting together now even more frequently than every month. And it started out as a program where we were actually really facilitating the session, and now they self-facilitate, they get together, and they have become just amazing friends and support for each other, and I think it's really, really important.
But I think those are both powerful examples of what it means to nurture social entrepreneurs. We know that there's no monopoly on good ideas, but in many ways, what we're talking about today is what it takes, right, as a backbone organization, as an organization that's helping to build individuals who can go out in the world and do good, what it takes for us to do that work. And so in many ways, what I want us to begin to talk about is the cultural shift that's emerging in the field. And so I'm going to ask both you, Kelly and Donovan, to talk a bit about sort of where you see things headed. And then, Kelly, I'm also going to ask you to jump in and share a bit with us about your ecosystem map and how that relates to the direction that you think social entrepreneurship is going in.
Sure. So, I mean, I am incredibly optimistic about where I feel this field is going. I guess I started my career in social enterprise more than 10 years ago at a pretty mainstream business school. And when I got started there were just a handful of students who were kind of interested in this, and now the Net Impact Club, which is sort of like the do-gooder club at the University of Michigan Business School, is one of the largest clubs on campus. And I was recently told that Harvard's Social Enterprise Club now has more members than their investment banking club does. So that's a pretty exciting trend. And then just, very personally with our experience here, when we got started, it was a small group of us who were really trying to push this agenda and talk about social enterprise and raise awareness. And, I always felt like I was always trying to be present in the economic development conversations in the state And I really felt like up until probably about a year ago, you know, I would walk in and people would say, oh, there's Kelly, she's the do-gooder, you know, creating these really nice businesses, isn't that nice? And, you know, somehow the tables have shifted. It probably is because we have enough of a track record that we can really show job growth, et cetera. But it's really, you know, we really continue to struggle with how do we talk about this work, impact entrepreneurship, and these types of entrepreneurs in a way that I would say makes it more mainstream, makes more people take this seriously, and I think we're getting there, but I think there's still, you know, a real challenge. And, you know, honestly, the reason we created this ecosystem map is, again, this is all a work in progress because I just got like several good ideas from listening to both of the two of you. I was taking notes like, ooh, I want to try the, you know, the social venture failure wake, and how are we going to, you know, who can we get to work on the pre-entrepreneur piece? And that stuff, you know, that stuff all needs to be in this map. So it's really just this concept of what does it take to really grow an enabling environment where these types of entrepreneurs can thrive, and we can take our economies to the next level.
Well, and Kelly, maybe you can walk us through briefly this map. I think it's really instructive. When we were preparing for this webinar, I thought, oh my God, this is brilliant that someone's taken the time to really map out this ecosystem. And so if you're interested on your computer, you can actually zoom into the map and see some of the headers that are in there. Unfortunately, we can't do it on our end, but you're more than welcome to do so as well. And you can, again, at the bottom left, you can increase the zoom, and it will allow you to see these headers. So at the very top, maybe you can walk us through where it says build the pipeline and the movement, Kelly. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, you know, I think the most important piece of all of this is we need the entrepreneurs, right? And I'd be curious to hear from the two of you, but our pipeline of entrepreneurs has continued to really be a challenge for us. So it's interesting. We have the, I would say, the demand side more figured out than the supply side. We have the services. We have all these amazing volunteers who would, I mean, the amount of hours and resources they're willing to commit to the success of the entrepreneurs is pretty amazing. And we've had to really think through, like, how can we build this pipeline? And so for us, you know, that comes through, we see students as a big part of the pipeline, so we're working very hard to, you know, work with universities, raise awareness with students, connect them, you know, get them off campus and get them coming to us and tapping into our network. And really sort of making sure that as entrepreneurs are considering their business models, they see impact as a piece of that. And then I think, you know, after that, it's really ensuring that the entrepreneurs have the business acumen that they need to succeed. So that piece of the map is small in this visual, but my experience is that piece of the map should be much bigger. I think we need to do a revision. It's really, I mean, this is the key. It is, as Donovan said, it's a long, hard haul, and not everyone can be good at everything, and really understanding if you can't do the sort of business functional area that is needed, you know, how do you find the resources to help you ensure that you're building your business in the way that's most optimal, and then expanding the market. So this is all about, you know, customers and scale. I would say many of our entrepreneurial ventures are still very early stage, and they're kind of struggling. We have a few that have grown very quickly and have really reached scale. But the key is really how do they find the customers for their services and the stable big customers that can really make them feel comfortable to grow, because many of them are at this place where they sort of say, well, we can't hire the capacity that we need until we're sure that we have the stable customer and we can really afford to continue to grow. Capital is a huge issue, and I think that capital that is, I would say, appropriate for the different stage of, where the venture is in their life cycle, and capital that is coming from the right sources. So that's why I'm sure, that's why we have our loan fund, and we are trying to raise the impact fund, and I'm assuming that's, where the drive for the seed fund that Donovan is raising is coming from, is it's very difficult for social entrepreneurs to access traditional venture capital still. There's still this, I think, I just see it happening when some of our entrepreneurs pitch in more traditional forums that, the sort of glaze goes over the eyes. And it's exciting what's happening in the field of impact investing, and I hope that it continues to grow, and I hope that really, we'll see the development of more and more funds. And then finally, just the societal support. This is sort of a catch-all. I really think we're finally starting to get traction with our government. I think having the support of policymakers is incredibly important, having the support of business leaders. We talk a lot about, who are the ecosystem stakeholders, and, our list, which may not be complete, is really the social entrepreneurs, the business leaders, the policymakers, the academic/thought leaders, and then the students, who we see as, a pipeline, but a very important source of pro bono, low bono talent.
That's right. So, thank you so much for that, Kelly. And Donovan, this really raises a few questions for me. It makes me ask you, first of all, where would you see yourself on this map? And then secondly, how do you identify the folk that you're working with and where they would sit in this ecosystem? Where would you place them?
Yeah, great question. They'd be at different stages for different programs that we offer. So at our earliest stage, we're still in the classroom, and these are folks in an exploration stage and a personal growth stage, pre-entrepreneurs, to use the language that you used. And that's certainly in the pipeline, and part of the movement that is, convincing those people that a career committed to designing a new community, a new economy, is a good and viable place to put your effort. It's not something we just hope that, I should make, I'll be an industrialist and I'll make a bunch of money and then I'll give it back and I'll get my name on a building and it'll be wonderful. No, this is actually, it's building the movement, straight through to, the provision of capital, and then, helping people to access new markets. We're working with one of our ventures right now is actively going through the process of registering to start manufacturing and selling in the United States. And so, I'd say it covers the gamut. But where we probably focus most of our effort is in that, the increasing the business acumen segment, where it's a cohort-based program. A lot of it has to do with, information transfer, building a network around them, through our mentor networks, and, formal and informal. And then just really, giving them this change in trajectory from being, going along like this to what we try to achieve, what we call the sort of the delta R, the radius difference, which then puts them onto this, in a position to have much more impact and be much more successful. And so, yeah, I think this is a very effective map, and we would, we don't frame it exactly this way, but I think it's really consistent with the right line of thinking, and I've certainly stolen from it so far.
Yeah, I've actually borrowed from it as well, Kelly.
Borrow, right.
It's been a great way to sort of talk about this work. And I guess, Donovan, in some ways, would you call your work sort of acceleration work, or would you be considered a social accelerator? And if so, how would you define that?
Yeah, so I mean, the accelerator piece would, our slingshot program, which is focused on growth stage, would be consistent with what many people would call an accelerator. We're working with existing businesses that are already on a trajectory, and we're looking to amplify that effort and get them to their point of destination more quickly. And it raises all of this conversation about social enterprise and social ventures, raises kind of an interesting question, which is a strategic question for us of, are we, we can recognize that there's a lot of ventures out there that are trying to, make a buck, and there's positive impact that comes from that. Uber is definitely a very popular current example. I don't think many people would call them a social enterprise, but I think a lot of people would recognize that there's potentially, transformative, largely good impact that would come from another offering out there that will allow people to not have to own their own vehicle. Because once you own a vehicle, you've already committed to most of the environmental and sprawl issues of that. So Uber is a very mainstream business, but at the same time achieve social good. Do we want to be cultivating the next Ubers? Well, that type of business already finds a home in a fairly conventional accelerator, and is very, very attractive to a lot of mainstream, purely financially motivated investors. For us, we want to make sure that we're actually being additive, and we're providing a new space for entrepreneurs that are more overtly considering multiple bottom lines to be, to find a home. And so, we're still looking for ventures that are going to grow and be successful and, move into the mainstream over time. But we're recognizing that we don't want to just tag along on folks that are already going to get there. We want to actually bring more of these ventures into the mainstream, which that means different model.
Well, and so before we transition into questions from the audience, which we're just a minute or so away from, I want the attendees to think about where you might identify your role as being on this sort of ecosystem map. And I also want you to remember to use the drop-down box over here in chat and pose your questions there. We've already been getting a lot of really, really good questions, and we want to keep that going. And so one of those questions, Donovan and Kelly, and in many ways, Kelly, this might be directed to you as well, and probably to both of you, but really it's how do you measure impact? Like, what statistics do you use to determine, or how do you define success, and what statistics do you use to help make that determination?
Yeah, well, we have been doing a lot of thinking about that, and I would say 2015 is the year of metrics for us. And for us, we measure, I would say, in all aspects of this ecosystem map, and by program as well. You can see we're definitely data heavy. But the real outcomes that we're trying to measure are job creation and lives touched, improved. But as a sort of ecosystem builder intermediary, it's very challenging to track data because our success is really the success of our entrepreneurs, and keeping track of everyone and making sure many of them have challenges tracking their own data and their own impacts, and we're dependent on them. So that's actually an area that we're working with our ventures as well. We've created a series of metric dashboards, and we're sharing that sort of tool with our ventures and trying to get all of our ventures sort of onto using these metrics dashboards so that we can, in some sense, kind of standardize the data collection. Of course, we work, I should have said, earlier, we work, as I think Donovan does, we work across industries. So, some of our ventures are providing solar power to women in rural Africa, whereas others are, creating jobs for immigrants here in Rhode Island, whereas others are low-cost health clinics. So all of the data is different. It would be, it would be wonderful to be able to do a deep dive by industry, but we just haven't really gotten there. So again, we have 2020 goals. We want to double our jobs created to 1,500 by 2020. So.
Well, and if you have some of those tools that you'd be willing to share, Kelly, feel free to paste them in the chat box if there are places that folks can use. That would be really helpful. Donovan, briefly, what types of tools do you use to help track impact?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I would say it ultimately boils down to an informed gut. And really what that means is, similar to Kelly's point, we work with ventures in a number of different sectors. And if there's a venture that is pursuing a meaningful problem, and in our mind and in the minds of their early clients, it's got a pretty good shot at being effective at it. Then at the recruitment stage, that's what we look for. For the impact fund, we're using B Corp assessment tool as the primary screen. But even within that, so then once we start working with them, we set goals and metrics and targets on three different categories. One is just business performance, revenue growth, all that kind of stuff, and then we set impact targets and then organizational development targets. The specifics of that are of the impact metrics that we choose are dependent on each venture. But where we source them from is IRIS is an international resource of impact-focused metrics. B Corp, again, some of the elements of the B Corp certification. Vent City has developed a tool called Demonstrating Value, which has a number of metrics in it. And so it's really about focusing on those places where this business is going to have leverage and have impact. And trying to make sure that we're looking at both the positive implications of their work, but also anticipating what some of the negative ones might be.
Right. And I know in our work, in the work I do with young folk who we've so aptly termed as pre-entrepreneurs, often the types of tools that we use to measure their success are based on indicators that we believe are necessary for them to be successful, i.e., in order for them to get into college, they have to, be on track to graduation. They have to be on track to complete their college requirements. So we use a lot of surveys, as well as so we use both quantitative and qualitative indicators to help determine whether or not they're actually moving forward at their stage in life. And when they graduate from high school and they're in college, we continue to track their progress. So I'll give an example. While a question that came in earlier was about how, for example, these young folks, I mentioned earlier, their app to address police brutality can help bring in revenue and what that stream might be and how it would be a social enterprise. Well, these young folks, part of what we do to help measure their success is to identify that they created both the concept itself and they're beginning to create the product. And so the outcome of the work we're doing is the conceptualization of their ideas into both written and publicly presentable formats. And so that is one outcome by which we're able to measure. So for example, if they weren't able to produce a presentation on their idea, then perhaps we're not seeing as much success in our work as we could otherwise. And one of the ways that they saw themselves as being able to generate revenue for their app is to sell that app on an individual basis, but to provide it, but to do so with additional features. So it would be free, but then the students could add features, and you could purchase those features to help sustain the app and the programming that would come. And so individuals themselves in the community would be able to purchase these additional features in this app. And so I think demonstrating what these young folk are able to produce is an example of what it means to be sort of a pre-entrepreneur and what it means to be placed in this ecosystem. And so we would subsequently see them move from being a pre-entrepreneur and building the pipeline to becoming, to helping them build business acumen, for example, later on. And so I'm going to continue to go to some audience questions. And one of the questions that has come up is this question about competition versus collaboration. One of our attendees has asked, you know, how do you make sure that organizations, especially nonprofits, work to not duplicate each other's missions? We have these really smart, energetic, passionate people who could do very well if they were working in a more collaborative fashion. How do you make sure that you know, that we're utilizing the resources that are available in the most effective way possible to advance social enterprises? This could be probably for you, Donovan.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and because the danger that I've seen on a number of occasions is that when you have a new sector starting up, which has the potential to be very impactful, you know, you often have, you know, early people that are sticking their necks on the line to try to, you know, create some new activity in there. And then in some cases, you know, nonprofits that have been advocating for change in this space will get into a competitive role on a sort of an enterprising nonprofit model, which can actually, in some cases, you know, in some cases it works, but the danger is that it actually undermines the development of that industry, which as it grew and matured, could actually be quite transformative and take society in a really good direction. And so there are definitely examples of where, you know, nonprofits participating in some of the early, you know, industries that they're advocating for actually can be counterproductive and creates tension and ill will and you know, undermines pricing and things like that. Or on the flip side, there's often, you know, you see a number of examples of enterprising nonprofits getting into very, you know, quite conventional business sectors, you know, graffiti removal or catering and things like that, where they're already, you know, mom and pop companies that are in there that are, you know, in the community, of the community, employing people and are, you know, providing a source of really, you know, important livelihood. And then those two, you know, become in a competitive position. And it's definitely a tricky process to go through. And I've been on the board of nonprofits that are looking at entrepreneurial initiatives, and I think they find it surprising when I say that I'm not always a big advocate for it. You know, it's almost by definition, a lot of nonprofit organizations are operating outside of the market sphere and are directly trying to address some of the negative impact that come from business activity. And so the more that they're, you know, they let government off the hook and others sort of donors off the hook to let them do that core work, you know, eventually the sort of that purpose gets lost in the chase to just be another small business.
You know, it's interesting, Kelly. Before I give a response as well, Kelly, do you have anything you want to add about this? I mean, how do you help direct sort of future entrepreneurs to existing entrepreneurs? You know, as you think about this pipeline itself, what would some of your suggestions be?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say I actually see one of our roles to help nurture the collaborations and discourage duplicative efforts. And I think because we've built, I think, such a robust community that if, as nonprofits in Rhode Island, and by the way, I should just say, like, Rhode Island is a very small place, so we all know each other. So I'm not saying that this would necessarily work everywhere, but most nonprofits in the state, if they're thinking about a social enterprise strategy, they're going to come to us, and we have a sense of what the marketplace looks like, and we can say, well, that's really, you know, this group and this group is already doing this. You might want to think about a different strategy, and we've sort of, you know, we have really over the years learned about different business models that are working elsewhere, and really try to play a role in the ideation for nonprofits as they're thinking through social enterprise strategies. So I think that that's a very, you know, something that an intermediary or an ecosystem builder should really play a leadership role in.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. It triggered a couple of things for me. I just had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who's trying to launch a tech incubator here in South Los Angeles, and I said to him, you know, I said, look, I think what you're trying to do is amazing. It's very needed, and we both agreed that, you know, really, you know, there couldn't be enough of these type of incubators because, you know, one might cater to one group versus another. So we said it's not necessarily a matter of us competing, but it's a matter of us figuring out how to make sure that it all fits within this sort of landscape, right? That's both translocal, but also one in which there's an ecosystem. So I also directed him to talk to someone else who's looking to create sort of a co-working shared space in South Los Angeles to see if there's a relationship they can build around their common goals and ideas so that they don't have to be duplicative, but instead can be more collaborative and thus strengthen their project. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ways in which relationships are built and established. And so what I find is that people approach us and they come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do this, but that's because of the relationships that we've been able to build across these networks throughout Los Angeles. And so I wonder if the same is true for you both. Briefly, before we move on to the question, have you seen that that much of the work you do is a matter of relationships?
100%.
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's all about relationships and trust and credibility. And so we are, I would say the strength of our model has really been collaborations. You know, we work with 9 universities across the state. We work with several governmental, you know, institutions, et cetera. So it's very important. And we just recently had a sort of an interesting, you know, illustration of this. We decided that we were sort of going to do our first industry focus area on food. And there are certainly players in the food space. And we all came together and said, okay, Rhode Island Food Policy Council does policy. Hope in Maine, which is a kitchen incubator, they do the food regulation, they do the preparation, and we do the business acumen. And we all work together. And Johnson & Wales is a big foodie school, and they do, you know, also some of the business acumen and testing. But it's, you know, no one's going to own the space, and that's not the interest of anyone. But when we all work together, we can, you know, that's how we're really going to empower the entrepreneurs. Give them what they need.
I agree. So here, before we transition out, I'm going to ask one final question. I know there's not much time for this before we move on to our champion member section, but I think this is a really important question from our attendees. And the question really centers on the role of race, equity, and equality, as well as opportunity for all. And so we know that one of BALLE's primary principles is to ensure that there's prosperity and opportunity for all. But often it's challenging to figure out how to actually do that. And so how do you all, very, very briefly in the last sort of 40, I know this is not a lot of time to answer this question, but in about 45 seconds or so each, what role do you see race and equity playing in your work, and how do you help to facilitate an opportunity for all agenda?
So I think in the case of our work, it's deeply embedded. So our primary focus is on making sure that, you know, we are focusing on ventures that are, you know, through their product and service trying to solve a problem. And, you know, the more that scales, the more that particular set of issues is positively impacted. And at the same time, we also need to make sure that on the operational side of what it's doing, it is not creating a new set of winners and losers. And so that's where this, you know, in addition to the broad impact metrics that we work with our ventures to create, there's also those organizational development ones that have entirely to do with making sure, you know, that your workers benefit, you know, proportionally or you know, and fairly to the value that they create, as well as the, you know, the communities that you're impacting and drawing from are also doing the same. And so it's, yeah, I mean, I was just getting ready to go off, but 45 seconds, yeah, lots more to say on that.
Thank you. And Kelly?
Yeah, sure. So I agree with everything that Donovan said, and I'm a little obsessed with this topic right now because I really feel that social enterprise has become a field of privilege, or maybe it's always been, but It's very hard to take the entrepreneurial risk. So on the entrepreneur side, we're really focused on, we have 2 new AmeriCorps Vista positions that are focused on working directly in the communities, trying to identify grassroots, community members who we can work with proactively to help them create ventures to solve problems that they know more intimately than anyone coming from the outside. So really thinking about how to make this opportunity to have a career and impact more accessible to everyone.
Now, I know we're getting ready to transition, but I'll wrap this part by saying that in my organization, we work explicitly with African American and Latino males. We are very, very, very clear about the need that we see and actually target that population to ensure that they have opportunities. And so we have about 250 young men between the ages of 14 and 18, high school age youth, who then transition on to college with a growing sort of base of alumni that we work with on an ongoing basis to help both provide training as well as ongoing support, including financial support, mentorship, counseling, and resources and access to the types of tools and skills that are needed for them to be successful. And so we're really explicit about that work. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leslie Lindo from BALLE, who's going to then transition us into our next session. Thank you all for joining us, and if you're a champion member, please stay online.
Great, welcome. And again, thank you for joining us for this month's webinar. We wanted to also make sure that you were aware that next month we will actually be at our conference in Phoenix, which we're really excited about. That's our 13th annual conference. And we will be doing a deeper dive into this topic as well as the 7 other solutions that frame our experience of what's working to build thriving local economies. And one of the other topics that we will be getting into, somebody raised a question about metrics. BALLE has developed with B-Lab the quick impact assessment for localists. So that's another way and that you can actually develop your metrics there and understand your impact. So these are going to be great topics that will all be at our conference next month, and we definitely hope that you will join us there. And you can see more information on the website that's listed here. And feel free to reach out to us at any time that you have any questions about the conference. So as D'Artagnan indicated, we will now be transferring over to our champion member Q&A with the speakers. So we want to thank the rest of you for joining us today, and champion members, please stay on the line. We'll just take 1 minute to allow everybody to leave the room.